This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states. Listeners, are you looking for a shortcut to better auto insurance for you? Something that takes all the research off your plate, something that's easy, something that matches you with lower rates, something genius. That's where NerdWallet comes in. These nerds have already done the work for you. Just answer a few questions and ta-da, you'll be matched with top insurance providers in your area. Find the right rate for you today at nerdwallet.com. After all, using NerdWallet is more than just smart, it's genius. Not all applicants will qualify for the lowest monthly payments. NerdWallet Insurance Services, Inc. CA resident license number OK92033.
What's up, champs? Welcome to another episode of the Short Shifts Fantasy Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Keeping Karlsson. I'm your host, Jeremy Priscillo. After a nice, long Four Nations break with some incredible hockey games, congratulations to Canada and to the United States for playing that tight of a game and coming in second. But wonderful game, wonderful finishing goal by McDavid. Shams, how do you enjoy the tournament? How are you doing today?
Well, while I'm really just happy to have normal hockey back, I have to say I am pleasantly surprised with the Four Nations. I'll put my hand up. I was one of the people that thought this was going to be maybe not all-star bad, but I thought it was going to be something a little bit maybe better at best. But this just kind of just surprised me throughout every game. Had some interest level, maybe not the Sweden one against the US, but those are just going to have to happen with these kind of round robin tournaments.
I was on the opposite side where I was one of the people super excited for this, and it exceeded my expectations. I saw one of the well-known writers commented that this may be the best advertising the NHL has done for the sport in the last 10 years. I tend to agree. Everybody that I know was talking about it, including people who aren't even sports fans. But let's get back to the NHL and the fantasy hockey that is going to kick back off at, I believe, 12:30 Eastern tomorrow. So get your lineup set. There's some early games, a ton of teams play, and there's been a ton of injuries and outjuries. So without further ado, let's talk about some of the guys who got hurt in the Four Nations tournament. I think the biggest blow, based on what we know right now, is Shea Theodore. Looks like he broke something in his wrist or his hand and is out week to week. What can you tell me about that one?
So right now, all that we know is week to week. I believe Friedman said something that it was closer to the playoffs, but I don't think anything has been said from the team. So right now, basically the way I'm looking at it is I'm starting with the expectation that he's out for at least the fantasy regular season, and then we'll see what's going on there. The interesting thing is that during the cup and medal presentation during the Four Nations tournament, Theodore was seen with a brace or a cast on his right arm. So you can see that it is something that definitely is something significant. So we'll have to wait and see. And then also we haven't had a practice yet, but the idea is that it will be, if you're on the betting side, it would be most likely going to be Hanifin taking that spot, but we'll have to wait and see. And then even with him taking it, maybe I'm a pessimist, but I'm not the biggest Hanifin fan, so probably is already stashed up in your leagues. But if you didn't get him, I'm not expecting, you getting a Theodore equivalent with him.
I think both Hanifin and Pietrangelo will be due for some slightly better production, but I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be, finding a stud off the wire to help you in this playoff push. Really unfortunate for Shea Theodore and his fantasy managers that he is not able to play for probably the next 3 to 4 weeks would be my guess based on the cast or brace that's on his arm. This also just gives Vegas a nice excuse to abuse the long-term IR relief that everybody loves in the NHL. we can't go too far into that on a fantasy podcast, but I'm going to enjoy the accusations of gaming the system as soon as they trade for someone with that newly acquired cap space. Another injured defenseman, Charlie McAvoy, got hurt and apparently ended up in the hospital for a bit during this tournament. What's up with him? How long is he out?
I'm not sure if we actually got an official out, but what the idea is that he had a right shoulder injury called significant from Chris Johnston. So with that and with the mixture of the infection that he got during that time, I would think this is just kind of a wait and see. As of this is right now about 5:45 Eastern. The last tweet we saw was no update on a timeline, but I'm not expecting this as a quick return. Maybe if I was to guess, I maybe put it somewhere in the Theodore range and then see if we see anything better. So right now it's Mason Lohrei that gets the first shot on the power play. And honestly, from what I've seen from some beat reporters and just kind of canvassing the media, is that people may have liked him better for the power play one, even when McAvoy was an option. So depending on your league settings and how deep your league is, he is the obvious addition for this outcome.
I agree. The word significant that was used in the initial report of the injury before the infection and the hospitalization, which was kind of unrelated to the actual initial injury. The use of the word significant for Charlie McAvoy really concerns me. I'd also like to point out that the Bruins are currently a point out of a playoff spot with one more game played than some of the other teams, but their goal differential is kind of bad. Like, they're the odd one out of those bubble 8th seed teams as far as goal differential goes. If they struggle the next couple of weeks, they may just shut down McAvoy for the season. If this is a 4 to 6 week injury, and I think we have 7 weeks left in the regular season for the NHL, it may turn into one of those, we're out of a playoff spot, so let's give him the rest of the time off. I'm sure he would want to play, but I'd be wary of Charlie McAvoy right now. Also, Mason Lohrei, he is what he is. Like, worth an ad, but don't expect much is kind of how I feel. Another bigger name player that is hurt right now, Matthew Tkachuk. I can't even say that name. He is day-to-day only, but there were some pretty scary comments on his injury. He tried to play through it. It was lower body. He ended up sitting out the entire third period in overtime in the Four Nations final last night, which I'm sure killed him. His brother made a comment of, it doesn't look too good. We'll see where it goes. Obviously, his brother's not a doctor, so don't trust that. But there was some good news this morning. Paul Morrissey, the Panthers coach, said that Tkachuk is day-to-day with a lower body injury. So that probably means he misses Saturday, but maybe he's back for Tuesday. How concerned are you on this?
Well, right now, I feel like with what we have, just kind of have to take the coach's word day to day. And I feel like this is like a Tkachuk day to day, is that maybe a certain other player that, honestly, I think it's a running joke with my thoughts on injuries is that NHL players can play through basically anything. And I feel like this is kind of that situation, is that for him not to play in the last third of the game, and that is just kind of a killer situation. And that is probably the marker for me that whatever it is significant. And now it's more of just kind of, can he play through it? And if they're saying day to day, wait and see, I would be just kind of crossing my fingers and maybe, honestly, looking at it now, is that my question is that if he comes back, let's just say he misses 3 games and then he's just stops shooting or stops being himself. These are the kind of situations that I'm scared of, is that you might just cut back too soon. And you might be fine from an NHL standpoint where the team's happy how he plays, but it might be that situation where he's not hitting as much or shooting as much, but he's still playing fine defensively. And then he stays around and then he just burns a hole in your fantasy lineup.
I'm a bit concerned about that also. Given that it's a lower body injury, I expect it would affect Tkachuk's speed the most, and he's already not a burner, so taking another step away from his speed may affect how he's playing in the lineup. But for now, as an owner, I'm just crossing my fingers that he'll get healthy and get back in the lineup. I suspect that even though Florida is safely in a playoff spot, that they'll want him back sooner rather than later because they're in a 3-horse race with Toronto and Tampa for the division win. And whichever 2 teams don't win that division have to play each other in the first round. And I'm sure they would much rather play an Ottawa, Detroit, Columbus, Boston type than have to play Toronto or Tampa in the first round. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but I do think that Tkachuk will come back sooner if possible to help with the playoff push, even though they're safely in a playoff spot. Speaking of teams on the outside of the playoff push, Sidney Crosby is also a game time decision for Saturday's game. This kind of sounds like Sullivan indicated there was an injury. I'm not sure what the injury was. He clearly played through it. I kind of assume that this is maybe just letting your 37 or 38, however old he is, horse rest for a little bit. I think he could take a day off and be okay. Just keep your eyes on the Penguins lineups because he may or may not be in. Last but not least for the injuries, there was a bout of the flu going through the locker rooms, and the flu this year has knocked out a few NHL players for like a week plus. Matthew Tkachuk was one of the ones who missed multiple games with the flu. Sounds like Josh Morrissey got the worst of it, having to miss the Four Nations final for Canada. He did not travel to St. Louis, where Winnipeg plays Saturday, so he will not be in the lineup then. You also got to keep an eye on in case anybody else comes down with the flu in the next couple days, having just spent time with the teams. Just something to monitor and keep your eye on. It's not a long-term concern, though. Were there any injuries that I missed before we take our ad break and go to outjuries, Shams?
No. The one thing I'll just add with that, the illness, is that we'll see is that, as we were talking before with Tkachuk playing through, just kind of not being able to play in the Four Nations, but trying his best to do so, wouldn't be surprised that maybe this is going to have to be something we check on in the morning. So you could keep an eye on game day tweets, is that there may be other sick players. I've heard that like basically the whole Sweden team was sick as well and all those things. So keep an eye out. We might be getting some kind of like, hey, random players not at warm up that we didn't know that was sick on Saturday morning. So just kind of, this is going to be one of those situations where you're just going to have to keep an eye out for another potential player that may have been able to play through the Four Nations, game, but maybe it's best for them to take one day off.
Even, you mentioned Sweden, I think Raquel and Zibanejad were 2 that were hit by the sickness that was going through the locker rooms. I believe one of them missed the last game against the U.S. That didn't matter. So again, keep an eye on those guys. Obviously, it's been 6 days since that game, so hopefully they've had time to heal up. But if it was, a bit worse of a illness, maybe they're not quite 100% or practicing. Keep an eye on those guys. Tomorrow's probably going to be one of the most active roster management days of the season for me. Like, I'm going to probably set an alarm for 15 minutes before every game time start, just so that I can check my lineups, make the adjustments as needed, get guys on my bench in. Going to be a bit more mentally taxing than the fantasy season usually is. With that, let's go to a short break, and we'll come back and talk about guys who got a chance to heal up over this break.
This NHL season has been as predictable as a puck rolling on its edge. No one knows where it's going. But that just means there's time for your favorite team to figure things out and games left for you to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN, stands for the Hockey Podcast Network, for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
This is a PSA, or public sock announcement. Experts have declared Bombas socks as the best way to warm up chilly feet. These pairs are super cushy, soft, and designed for maximum coziness. Plus, for every pair purchased, another pair will be donated, so someone in need of essential clothing can stay warm this winter. Go to bombas.com/listen and use code LISTEN for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/listen and use code LISTEN at checkout.
There's one thing that will forever change the way you sleep, and it's the softest 100% organic cotton bedding from Boll & Branch. You'll fall asleep faster, wrapped in the most luxurious comfort. You'll never sleep hot again with airy blankets, cloud-like duvets, and breathable sheets. You'll experience pure comfort on night one and feel your bedding get softer with every wash. Discover the difference with 15% off your first order at bollandbranch.com with code CUMULUS. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
Welcome back, everyone. One of the plus sides of this Four Nations break is that players who were nursing injuries got a couple weeks to heal, or a week and a half to heal without missing any games. So let's go through some of the players who have been announced to be returning immediately following the Four Nations break. First of all, I'm going to do a guy that I don't see on our rundown because I forgot about him. Sean Durzi will be back for Utah. I don't know if they're going to put him on the first power play. They're not weak enough to run a two-defense power play like they have in a couple previous years. Mikhail Sergachev is a pretty dang good power play quarterback. I would expect to see Durzi playing like 20 minutes in power play 2. He does get quite a few blocks. He does get to play with some talented players. I think Logan Cooley is on his way back too, although there hasn't been much news. What do you got for us with lines there, Shams?
It looks like from the power play, it's the top one is what you expect. It's Schmaltz, Hayton, Keller, Sergachev, and Genther. Keep in mind, Cooley is kind of close, but he's not ready to play, so that might get shaped up when he's comes back. And then Durzi is the point man on the second. So I kind of see Durzi as that person where maybe you saw Sergachev when he was in Tampa as the second behind Hedman of like, hopefully he gets his blocks in. He might get some points just because of how he's going to be getting play on the 5-on-5, but I wouldn't be putting too high of a hopes because unless something happens to Sergachev, I feel like they have him steadily set in that top power play.
I agree with you. I think you mentioned Cooley coming back. I expect that's just a straight up replacement for Barrett Hayton. That's how Hayton got onto the first power play, and that's how he'll get off of it. I would expect Durzi for the remaining 6 weeks of the season, 7 weeks of the season, to be like 2 shots per game, 2 blocks per game, and maybe a 40-point pace. And that's probably above replacement level for a fantasy defenseman. I've actually had him stashed in Cupful the entire season just because I drafted him and my IR never overflowed the 4 spots, so he's just kind of sat there long forgotten, and I'll be getting him back in my lineup. He's probably my second best defenseman right now. That's an issue for another discussion. But okay, on to some of the other names. The Columbus Blue Jackets will get both Boone Jenner and Kirill Marchenko back. Jenner was playing on the second line with Fantilli and no, not Fantilli. Who was on the second line? Oh, Kent Johnson and Cole Sillinger. And then the top line was Fantilli with Marchenko and Voronkov, which had been a really good line. I suspect Marchenko jumps back into the first power play, and Jenner jumps onto the second one. Have you seen any concrete lines from those? I didn't see them tweeted.
So we do have just the even strike lines, as you said, with the Fantilli, Voronkov, Marchenko lines staying together, because I think some people are worrying about how Jenner might mess up that. But right now, all we have is the even strike, so it's left to your own devices on to guess how the power play is. But I have a feeling is that at the very least, I think the top line is set for the power play, and then we'll see if. And I would guess that Jenner probably doesn't break the top power play, but it's wait and see for official confirmation.
Also worth noting that they have Jenner on left wing here, which means when Sean Monahan returns, I guess Sillinger would get bumped down to the third line, and Boone Jenner would get to stay in the top six. I know there were concerns that he may be deployed as your prototypical third line center because he fits that mold pretty well. Just to be clear, you agree with me that Boone Jenner is absolutely worth picking up if he's available in your league? I kind of glazed over that because that's an assumption I've had for myself for a long time.
So yeah, I think now that we see that he's top six, that was my hesitation, as you said, is that especially now with the Monahan injury, that it kind of saves that spot of just like right now, top six. Hopefully he's been rested long enough that I expect that his bagger stats will stagger around. So at the very least, he is a, bottom of the roster, depending on how deep your league is. At the very least, I wouldn't be, say, if you have him in your IR spot, trying to find, just drop him because you already like the guys you have. I feel like at the very least, give him a spot. And one last thing is that this week is kind of weird. So maybe if you have a position where I have guys that I like, but because of just how the schedule is, depending on it's always stacked on a lot of busy nights, that you might not even get to fit a Jenner game if you even like him. So depending on, say, if you're fighting for a playoff spot and you already like your plays, maybe it might be a situation where you drop him into your IR or try to not make a move and let him stay there. But it's a someone that at the very least you have to ask yourself, does he make my team better? Not a snoozer kind of situation.
This is Boone Jenner we're talking about. I actually am leaving him in my IR for a game against Chicago on Saturday, which I'm not thrilled to not be getting. I think there's a good chance he gets a point in a game against Chicago. Actually, with some of the other injuries, maybe he does sneak into my lineup. But I'm just sitting there my lineup's already full. Why would I drop someone to bring back Boone Jenner? It's frustrating. Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday next week are going to be the same exact thing. Enjoy making some benching decisions here. Other injury returnees, Nico Hischier is back. I don't think there's much important here other than that he's a really good player and you should get him in your lineup. Anything interesting with the lines?
I think the way to look at this is that this benefits both Beyer and Mason, that now they have Hischier back with him to be on the top six. And then the interesting thing is just to keep in mind is I've never been a fan of taking the third wheel on the Hughes line, but right now it's looking that it's Palat playing with Hughes and Brett. So if you have Mercer hanging around, this is just a dead side to let him go with trying to fit the rest of your team into your lineup.
Next up, we have some Philadelphia Flyers returning. Owen Tippett and Rasmus Ristolainen both coming back. Tippett's kind of interesting, but I have no clue what Philly's going to do with lines. He was kind of in and out of the doghouse for a while. They have a ton of young wingers. They just added Jacob Pelletier and Andrei Kuzmenko, who add more wingers. How many wingers do they have there? I feel like they have 8 middle six wingers on Philly here, and I have no clue how they're going to deploy these lines, and I haven't seen anything through Twitter yet. But I'd be getting Owen Tippett back in the lineup, and Ristolainen's a nice banger. Anything I missed here?
Yeah, just one thing to keep in mind is that if you're looking at, say, if Ristolainen's in the waiver wire right now, is that Philly's one of the few teams that only play once during the weekend, and they only play 3 times next week. So there's a lot of teams that play 5 games or even 6 in the matchup. So if you're looking for a defenseman, depending on your options, I might be looking for someone else for this exact matchup. But in general, I've been a fan of Ristolainen just because of his bagger stats. And depending on your situation, if you need that for your categories league, go ahead and pick him up.
Schedule-wise, I definitely think you could do better than Ristolainen here. Tippett, obviously, is probably still in the can't-drop type category for me. I do want to see where he's deployed, though, and what his power play stats are. What can you tell me about Valeri Nichushkin? It's our next guy.
So good news is that he's close. We're now at the point where the team is announcing what games he's not playing instead of, just saying like, hey, he's injured. So right now he's not going to be playing in the back-to-back this weekend. So really what it is that something to keep in mind is that while, it's not nice to see that he's not playing there, but he is playing, practicing in a full contact jersey. And the nice thing is that for the following week, while they only play twice, they do play on 2 light days. So say if he does come back from a injury situation and able to play next week, you'll be able to get both of his games and maybe just drop like a random guy that wasn't even seeing your roster, and you just get 2+ games anyway out of this. So kind of just pay attention to game day tweets and then just wait for his return. This is going to be a situation that after this weekend, I wouldn't be surprised for him to come back at any game after that.
I suspect Nichushkin is back for Wednesday, Friday, like you said, get those 2 off-night games. I'm interested to see what the lines look like with Nichushkin now on the team. I think they could have an interesting power play unit. Nichushkin is usually a pretty central part of their power play. Last but not least, we've got a couple lesser ones. Adam Lowry sounds like he's going to come back as the third-line center for Winnipeg. He may get bumped up a line because Winnipeg sounded like one of the teams that was going to rest some of their Four Nation guys. So maybe he gets a game at the second line or something. Definitely a guy that is more of a fringe player, but I noticed that name. And the other situation that's interesting to watch is Karel, Vejmelka, and Connor Ingram are both either sick or returning from an injury and are really close. They play Saturday and Sunday. I'm guessing they're both going to be healthy enough to split. I had originally added Vejmelka thinking he'd get both, but then he got sick, and Ingram is back sooner than I thought. So keep your eye on that if you roster either of those goalies. I think that's going to be a last-minute decision for, I think, 2 pretty decent matchups for the Utah Hockey Club. Finally, let's just grab a quick summary. I'm just going to run through a quick summary of guys that are getting a rest day back from the Four Nations or confirmed to not be getting a rest day. Coaches have confirmed that the following players are definitely playing on Saturday. Zach Werenski, Dylan Larkin, although he may rest later in the week because it's 5 games in 7 days for the Wings, is what they said. Brad Marchand, Vincent Trocheck, Cale Makar, Nathan McKinnon, Arturi Lehkonen, Sam Bennett, Sam Reinhart, and Drew Doughty. Players that are confirmed to at least be missing the Saturday game. Connor Hellebuck is not starting, and they don't play a back-to-back, so he's actually not going to play again until Tuesday. Josh Morrissey is still sick. Matthew Tkachuk is still hurt. And then on the maybes / players that the coaches weren't willing to confirm or deny their presence, Jake Sanderson, Brady Tkachuk, Sidney Crosby, as we mentioned before, is a game-time decision, and Kyle Connor is flying back and wants to play, but the coach has not said anything about it. Anybody else that you've heard news one way or another on? Kind of crazy time this is.
Yeah, as of now, nothing of updates on those, but one last thing on the players that we're talking about is that as of this morning, Travis Green said that he hasn't spoken with Sanderson or Brady, so this is more of a wait and see. I would guess that they could potentially be playing, especially as we talked about Matthew Tkachuk. I would kind of put the same kind of moniker on Brady that they would have to probably tell him he's not playing versus him not wanting to. But hopefully have an update at least, say, later today on game day tweets. But at the very least, those are more of just a wait for a confirmation than worry if they're not going to play.
If I remember correctly, Brady got banged up a bit in one of the earlier Four Nations games also. And so maybe, there's a bruise or a soreness that they force him to rest, even though they're in the middle of a playoff push. The other thing that I'm really angry about, that I will just throw this out in the ether, the coaches are denying us a Hellebuyck-Binnington rematch. On Saturday, St. Louis and Winnipeg play each other. And Comrie is starting for Winnipeg, and I'm almost sure Hofer's going to start for St. Louis. But it would have been really cool to see a Hellebuyck and Binnington rematch. And knowing Binnington, he probably would have tried to start a fight. But they were two really great Canada-US games with some really good goaltending. I would have loved to see those two guys go head-to-head 3 days later. 2 days later, actually. But with that, thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed our show, please consider joining the Keeping Karlsson Patreon group at keepingkarlsson.com/patron. Super supporters receive ad-free episodes, and you can interact with Brian, Elon, Shams, myself, the rest of the Short Shifts crew, and hundreds of talented fantasy managers on our active Discord server. Check out GameDayTweets.com to get all the best info from Twitter without having to deal with the rest of Twitter. It includes team-by-team and searchable tweets by player name, and goalie starts. Visit that site and the other great sites we use to research our episodes with at Yahoo, Frozen Tools, and Natural Stature. Our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach. Until we see you next time, play smart, keep your shifts short.
This is a PSA, or public sock announcement. Experts have declared Bombas socks as the best way to warm up chilly feet. These pairs are super cushy, soft, and designed for maximum coziness. Plus, for every pair purchased, another pair will be donated, so someone in need of essential clothing can stay warm this winter. Go to bombas.com/listen and use code LISTEN for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/listen and use code LISTEN at checkout.